Defensive contributions have been added to FPL. Should you be picking players with the best clean sheet potential, attacking returns, or focusing just on defensive contributions? In today's video, we're going to pick that apart and then go through some of my favorite defenders you should be considering owning for your game week 1 teams. We'll look at the premium options, we'll look at the cheap options, we'll look at some rotating options as well that you can go with that can pick apart the best fixtures and attack those newly promoted teams as well. What is up everyone, FPL Harry here and welcome back to another video. I hope you're all doing well. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here as well. We are back. I said it, the daily uploads are here. We started yesterday with some key players to discuss and now we're going into a 3-day series. Best defenders today, best midfielders tomorrow and best forwards on Wednesday. I honestly am so excited to be recording this video. Some of you said it, that it came through the screen with my first video back from my honeymoon. I'm so, just absolutely ready for the final 2 weeks of preseason and getting into the FPL season as well. So before we do that, of course, make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure you are joining the subscriber only mini league where we're looking to donate some money to charity at the end of the season for every single one of you who finishes inside the top 25k, whether you do it all the time or whether you were hoping to do it for the first time. Anyone inside the top 25k, we will be donating money to charity as long as you're in my mini league. Of course, we are using a lot of data throughout these videos during these series. It is all coming from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. I have custom tables. I use the fixture tickers. I'm using the defensive contribution points tables on the Scout website. It is like they do sponsor the channel, but I absolutely love it. I love the data. I use it so much. I'm always deep diving into it and it is so useful, particularly for the defenders and defensive contributions as well. So go and check it out. But let's get into the video. So the big thing this season is, of course, defenders and defensive contributions in particular. Should we be starting to focus more on that, picking players like a Van Dijk, a Murillo, or should we be picking attacking defenders like a Munoz, potentially like a Frimpong might be as well? So that is what we're going to try and answer in today's video. The quick answer is that there is no real solution. You can't just go, I'm going to pick players based on defensive contributions, because there are some attacking fullbacks that you might want to have a go and a look at as well. And we will discuss all of that in the video today. What we're really going to do, and we're going to start off with a bit of a data table. And I apologize, I do my best not to show things like this in my video because they can be quite overwhelming and they can be quite daunting as well. But what I want to do, we've taken the top 30 defenders last season based off points per 90 that are still in the league this season. And we've basically looked at their overall metrics. Where have they got points from? Did they get points from goals or assists? Did they get points for defensive contributions, or did they get points from clean sheets as well? And then I've added some conditional formatting. Basically what we can see is I think 24 of the defenders got more points from clean sheets than they did from defensive contributions or from attacking returns. So the key takeaway is you still need to be picking defenders from teams that you think will keep the most clean sheets. That is still the most important thing when you are picking a defender. Defensive contributions, attacking returns can add stuff on top, but 24 of the top 30 defenders last year were in that bracket because of the amount of points that they got from clean sheets. This doesn't even include the bonus points that they got from clean sheets as well. And defenders are much more likely to pick up bonus points if they keep a clean sheet than if they get an attacking return or something like that as well. And then outside of that, if you're just looking at defensive contributions and attacking returns, 19 of the top 30 got more points from attacking returns last year than they did from defensive contributions. And only 11 of the top 30 were in the 11 of the top 30 because of their points they got from the defensive contributions. So I'm not saying that defensive contributions, which I feel like I've said about 20 times already in the first few minutes of this video, and I'm sure we'll use it throughout as well. I'm not saying that they're not important, and they are really important if you know where to pick, is basically what we're going to go with. We're not going to benefit every single defender just from defensive contributions, and you can't just pick any defender in the game and think you're going to get defensive contribution points. But if you pick the right ones, you can end up doing really, really well off the back of it. So if you look at someone like a Tarkowski, 44 points from defensive contributions last year. You've also got the likes of Murillo high up there, but you've got someone like a Gabriel who only actually got 4 points from defensive contributions last year. So it is still picking players and being able to play to their strengths. So don't pick players who are maybe, more attacking, expecting to get defensive contribution points. You can still pick fullbacks because they get good attacking returns. You can still pick centre backs now because they get good defensive contributions, but you do need to always be picking defenders who get the best clean sheets. Generally, there is still going to be a mix. You're going to get fullbacks doing well. You're going to get centre-backs doing well now. It's just increased the pool of defenders that you can start to pick from. The centre-backs with defensive contributions are likely to be more good on a regular basis. So you're going to get your 4 points from your defensive contributions more often, and your sort of standard point is going to be better throughout the season. But your attacking fullbacks are more likely to hit that 15-pointer like a Cucurella, but he's also then likely to hit a 2-pointer because he's not getting defensive contributions as well. Then the other thing just to quickly go through on this table is that value out of 100, just to have a look at some of them that are doing really well based on their price for this year. So Murillo and Milenkovic do really well. Your premiums that are actually in at 6 million, the likes of Gabriel, Gvardiol, Van Dijk, although they're expected to score really well this year, they're not actually scoring that highly for value based on the money you're having to spend for them. But actually a couple of cheaper ones. So you've got Williams of Nottingham Forest in there as actually the best value pick, going in at just 5 million. Of course, cheaper if you can't get up to a Murillo or a Milenkovic. I do like him. And the other one actually is Chris Richards at Crystal Palace in at 4.5 million. Could be the standout option. Now, there is a little bit of uncertainty about his place. We'll talk about that at the Palace option as well. But I do like those as a couple of standouts for some of the best value picks that we could get this year. So now that all the detail is out the way, we're actually going to go to a bit of a broader view, and we're going to start looking at some of the best defenses in the league from last year. So what we've got is the top, all the 17 teams that are in the league again this year compared to last year, ranked by expected goals conceded. You've also got how many clean sheets they kept per match as well. And then you have their ranking in the bracket as well. So actually, if we use an example of Fulham, they were actually the 6th best defense for underlying data, but they were 17th for actual clean sheets. And actually you see something slightly different for Nottingham Forest, right? They were 9th for underlying data, but much higher when it actually comes to clean sheets. So it depends which metric, but they're ranked by underlying data. Spurs right at the bottom, and then you've got the 3 teams coming up. Leeds were actually the better team in terms of underlying data, but of course Burnley were the best in terms of actual output and number of clean sheets that they kept, and were so good in terms of their data. Sunderland and Leeds particularly, but Sunderland definitely are a team to attack. When we start to look at defensive data for the teams still in the league, Brentford, Wolves, West Ham remain teams to attack. We are expecting a bit of an improvement from Spurs based off a new manager and actually not having quite such the rush of games at the start of the season that they did have at the end of last year. When we're starting to look at defences, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester City, Forest, probably the ones we're really looking at to target. I do expect a little bit of a regression for someone like a Fulham. Also, Newcastle not looking good at the moment during pre-season. So the first defense that we're going to pick apart, and actually is probably one of the best examples of the defensive contributions versus attacking returns versus trying to find a combination of both debate that we are having during pre-season, and that is Nottingham Forest. To start off with, the fixtures look great, and that is why most drafts you will see will have at least one of these defenders in. And I'm actually seeing a couple starting to have 2 in because of how good value, as we saw earlier on, someone like Williams can offer. There aren't many 5 million defenders in the game that are really worth considering at the moment. You could look at someone like an O'Brien or a Mikalenko at Everton, but Williams does feel like the best of that price bracket. So you could add him on top. But if we're only saying we want to pick one, I think Olareina is a defender that is going to really struggle to get in loads of teams early on in the season. His actual output last year was quite good at times, but his defensive contribution numbers are much lower than the other 3 that you've got, and his attacking data doesn't really stand out. He did actually get more attacking returns than maybe we would have expected, and at 5 million, he doesn't come close to what we think Williams is able to offer. His goals and assists per 90 minutes, his expected data, and his defensive contributions are all better than Olareina. So if you're looking at a 5 million option, you do start to think Williams is the one to go with. The only thing to mention, though, is Forest do have European qualifiers between Game Week 1 and Game Week 2, and Game Week 2 and Game Week 3 as well. Williams is probably the least nailed of all the Forest defenders. I do think he is nailed, and I do think he'll play almost every game. But if there was to be a change in the Forest defence for a starting lineup, he would probably be the one you'd predict to come out of it, just because he didn't start the season last year as first choice. But if you're going for a cheap option, Williams, and he offers great value. Then you have Milenkovic, and then you have Murillo. And Murillo is just that defensive contribution beast that we have at Forest, averaging over 10 per 90. Of course, you need 10 as a defender to get the +2. So he's going to be getting it a fair amount of time. And there is this graphic on Twitter at the moment as well, and it is just showing quite how good Murillo could be for defensive contributions. And Milenkovic is kind of that one. His defensive contributions are good. His attacking data is really good. And it's just whether we expect the goals and assists to outweigh that of Murillo. And if you want to play FPL, not just counting defensive contributions, which I don't really want to do either, Milenkovic is a really good and exciting pick. And there's not much to pick between them. Milenkovic is more likely to spike a 15-pointer with a goal and a clean sheet. Murillo is more likely to have the base of between 4 or 8 every week because of the defensive contributions he's able to have. Personally, I think if I was picking one, Murillo is the one that was in my latest draft. I do like Milenkovic as a bit of a differential, and over a short period of time could actually be the better one to go with. But as time goes on and I'm trying to save money in my game week 1 draft, I do really wonder about Williams. I'm going to keep an eye on preseason, his minutes and stuff like that. So if you've got the money, I really like Murillo. Milenkovic is quite close if you'd rather some goal threat and you think people are overdoing defensive contributions. But actually Williams probably is the best value pick that we've got at Forest. And then we're going back to Liverpool. Now, we discussed them all in the video that we had yesterday, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much. And there is the added element of rotation at Liverpool. The fullback position is just a no-go for me. You've got Frimpong, you've got Bradley, you've got Kirkes and Robertson. There's just too much going on there for me to consider any of them. So I'm going to rule all of them out, and I will not recommend any of you going for the fullbacks. In the comments on the video yesterday, the Liverpool fans have sort of urged me to think that Konate will be in the team for Liverpool going into the season. He's not going to leave, and there's not that much certainty that they'll sign another centre-back either. So for the start of the season, Konate does look safe, but I still think Van Dijk is the standout. He is one of those few defenders who has the ability to combine being nailed, attacking returns, clean sheet potential, and defensive contribution numbers that you can see here as well. He is a defender, based on this video, that I do think I'm going to start putting in my drafts more than maybe I have done recently. And then probably the other defence that I'm seeing lots of people discuss as a team in general is Crystal Palace. And Crystal Palace, I spoke about yesterday, is a really interesting one. It particularly bodes well for defenders that they are hitting the ground running. They look so good in pre-season, but they are the perfect ones to rotate into your starting lineup. Chelsea away, Villa away, Liverpool at home in the first 6 is not great, but Forest at home, Sunderland, West Ham, and it just continues until about game week 10. And we'll talk about some rotations at the end of this video that you can do with Crystal Palace. If you're going with someone like a Munoz, again, you're chasing the attacking returns. Lacroix is really good for defensive contributions, a bit like Murillo is. And then you've got slightly cheaper ones in Mark Gay, and you've of course got Chris Richards in as well, a player I've already picked out. I really like Richards. That's the first thing I'm going to say. If you're going for a 4.5 million option, I prefer him over Mark Gay. He of course has a slight risk of going to someone like a Liverpool, whereas Richards is definitely going to stay. Crystal Palace fans have told me that there is a slight chance that they sign a centre-back, although with how Richards has been performing, there doesn't seem that it's going to be a priority for the club. It's then, is it worth going from Richards to Lacroix or Richards up to a Munoz, for example? Again, it's a bit like the Forest example. If you've got the money, then yes. I don't think there's that much to pick between a Munoz, Lacroix. Munoz is going to get the 15-pointer. He's going to get the big return that like a Milenkovic is going to get, but Lacroix is going to be a nice, steady, underlying data, defensive contributions type pick. Personally, I'm not actually sure I love the Lacroix pick as much. If I was picking a Palace defender, I'd go Richards if you want the cheap option, or I'd go to Munoz and find the money. Lacroix will do really well. The defensive contribution data is really strong. But if I was picking one for my own team, Munoz would probably be the one I'd look at if I've got the money to go with and get the attacking pick that we've seen in the past. If not, go for the defensive contribution cheap pick that is Richards in 4.5 million. So just to put that into a bit of a ranking, you've got lots of underlying data in here, but we're just going to talk through some of it. So you've got points per 90, XGI per 90, XGC, sort of goals conceded for the team, defensive contributions per 90, of course, 10 needed for defenders, and the expected points from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. Again, it's so good at the moment during preseason. Get the most of it. Try it out for preseason. If you love it, you can keep it. If not, but links and everything are in the description. So Van Dijk is my favorite. He is the defender that can combine everything that we want. And then it is the Forest defenders. It is Murillo and it is Milenkovic. If you have the money, I would go and spend it. I do think they are really worthwhile. I do like Gvardiol. He doesn't come through loads because of the lack of defensive contributions. But when you look at the City opening 6 fixtures, I do really like him. We haven't spoken loads about the Everton defence actually during this video, partly because David Moyes has said he doesn't feel they are ready for the start of the season. Branthwaite didn't even go on pre-season tour. Tarkowski is just about returning from his own injury. His defensive contribution numbers, though, are incredibly strong. If you do want to spend it, absolutely fine. I'm just not sure, based on what we've heard from David Moyes, he is worth it for the start of the season, up at 5.5 million. They are also a team, Everton, that do tend to start slowly. In both the 23-24 campaign and 24-25 campaign, they got just 2 clean sheets in the first 10 games in both of those seasons. So 4 clean sheets in the opening 20 games. They are a team that starts slow. And with Moyes saying that they're not fully ready, I don't love it. If you don't believe that and you think they are ready, then Tarkowski should be on all of your radars for how good he can be for attacking returns, defensive contributions, and clean sheets as well. Next up is Gabriel. I think after this video, I'm going to take him out of my draft that I did put up on Friday. I think doing some of this research has changed my thinking a little bit, so there might be some changes for the next draft. But Gabriel, if he is back, of course, he's yellow flagged, is still a good pick and will be a good pick during the season because, as I said at the beginning, clean sheets are just the most important thing. And then it is the Crystal Palace defenders. I've gone with the Lacroix just over in terms of predicted points, in terms of value. Fantasy Football Scout do like him as predicted points. I've got Munoz in there. If they were the same price, you would just go definitely to Munoz. It's maybe at game week 1, just what that 0.5 million can do. They're very close. And it's Cucurella. If he was 5.5, he'd be very popular. I think just in at 6 million. Defensive contribution numbers are low. He is playing a slightly more reserved role recently for Chelsea compared to what we saw at the end of last season. And then number 10 is Williams. Just because in terms of actual output, he's not as good as these others, but at 5 million, he might be the best value player. 5 million is a really weird price point for me to do my graphics, because if I put him on the budget options, he's the best. But if I put him on the premium options, he's not quite as good as the others, but he should definitely be considered if you're trying to free up a bit of money. So as I just said, if you wanted to add a 5 million option into this, I would have Williams of Forest at the top. Outside of him, doing this data, I really like Chris Richards at Palace, 4.5 million. If you can rotate him in around the good fixtures, given the way they've already started preseason, I really like. Next up is Wan-Bissaka of West Ham. He did really well at the end of last season and started picking up some attacking returns. He's actually predicted to be the best defender in terms of point scoring out of all the defenders that we've got here. Anderson is a really good one for defensive contributions. The fixtures are pretty mixed, so you'd need to find a way to rotate him. Then it is Mark Gay of Crystal Palace, but if you're picking Richards, there's probably not need for him. Van der Ven, based on the fixtures, we are expecting an improvement with Spurs, and we're already seeing that during pre-season. Then it is Konza. He's just a little bit low down. Just those defensive contribution numbers are not nearly high enough for maybe what we'd be expecting for a player like Konza at the moment. And their opening fixtures are not bad, so one to consider. Then it's Senesi, and we've got Agbadu. And actually, a player I've really started to consider in this is Dorgu. And I posted on socials asking Man United fans about him, and they are saying very positive things. He's looked very good in pre-season. Now, he's number 9 in the list at the moment, just because the fixtures don't look quite as strong as maybe you'd want. And also, he wasn't great at the end of last season as well. If he continues pre-season the way that he has started it, he will definitely be bumped up that list. So one to keep an eye on as well. And number 10, if you need a 4 million option, I am recommending a Starve of Burnley at the moment. They were good in the Championship in terms of underlying data. There are a few options that you could look at. Also, Hill at Bournemouth, with it looking like Zabani is going to leave, could be one at 4 million who might start there. But just for reliability, I would go with the Burnley defender. And just before we wrap up, let's have a look at some of those cheap rotating options and actually how they rotate well with each other. Given that I have Richards as my favourite of the 4.5 million options, I've decided to start with a couple of rotations that he works well with. The way this works is they're not color-coded based on fixture difficulty. The green is the fixture that you'd want to play, and the grey is the fixture that you would not want to play. So, for example, Van der Ven and Richards, you play Van der Ven game week 1, Richards game week 2, Van der Ven game week 3. You could play either in game week 4, so on and so forth. So Van der Ven and Richards, or Wan-Bissaka and Richards, depending on which of those two options you like, is the first option, and a really nice rotation with 2 great players, and it gives you a pretty strong first bench some of the weeks as well. Next up is a couple of others moving away from Crystal Palace. So actually Fulham and Wolves rotate really well, and you've also got West Ham and Aston Villa. You can look at the graphics on screen to know exactly which fixtures you'd want to play over the first 10 game weeks. Just before we have a look at a couple of 3-way rotations, this is a big shout out to FPL Rotation Planner. It is linked in the description, and it's what site does recommend a lot of these rotations if you're looking for them for your team. You do have the ability to select clubs, lock players in if you definitely want to rotate with a Richards. If you wanted to rotate with a Williams at Forest, for example, you could go and do that and look at it all yourself. It is a tool I really like, and it is, of course, free to use as well. And the final one is going to be those three-way rotations. So we looked at the Wolves Fulham option, but if you also add Bournemouth in there as well, it becomes even stronger. Does actually potentially look good for a certain bench boost later down the line as well. And the other one, if you don't have quite a bit of money, is Dorgu, Richards, and Nastava. And this is actually something I've put in my draft for a couple of times over the last couple of days. I don't know whether it will stay. I need to keep an eye on Dorgu, but if he looks really good, Dorgu, Richards, and Nastava, and that could be really strong for a bench boost in game week 2. Fulham away for Dorgu, Richards against Forest at home, and then Nastava against Sunderland as well. So if you're looking for an early bench boost, that could be one that you could look at as well. Those are lots of defenders. We've looked at rankings. We've talked about defensive contributions. We've looked at rotations. Hopefully everything on defenders to make things a little bit clearer. Just to summarize it, pick defenders who are likely to keep clean sheets. Have a little look at attacking numbers and defensive contribution numbers. They are absolutely fine to have either in your team. It is just broaden the pool of defenders you are able to pick. It also means that if you have a Murillo in your team who's got a slightly difficult fixture, he goes away to Newcastle, for example, or he's got Brighton and you think he's not going to keep a clean sheet, you can still play him now because the base is definitely higher because the chance of a 4-pointer rather than 2-pointer is now there. And it's the lack of need to force transfers in defense. I think we'll make much less transfers in defense this year just because someone like a Van Dijk, a Murillo is more set and forget. Whereas if you're playing a fullback, you do need to target the fixtures a little bit more. But clean sheets are still king with defenders. Anyway, that is all for the defenders video. Let me know what you think. Are there any players that have stood out in this video that you haven't considered before, or anything in this video that has changed your current draft in terms of defenders? Let me know who has gone into your team and let me know who's gone out. I can tell you that I have dropped one of my defenders and Chris Richards has gone in. We'll talk about all of that in an updated draft because I'm liking the way Palace look in pre-season and some of their underlying data as well. Anyway, any questions you have about this video, defenders, drop it all in the comment section down below. It is so good to be back recording daily videos. Tomorrow morning, we'll be talking about midfielders. We'll be looking at those budget options, we'll be looking at those mid-price options, and actually, is someone like a Bukayo Saka, Palmer worth it when you could have a look at the likes of Brian and Burmo, Wirtz, Marmoush in at cheaper prices as well. Thank you all for watching. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.